All right, let's talk a little golf. Mike Wellington joins us. Mike is a professional golfer who has been a friend of mine for years, was an intern with me when I was at 550, and he just came over from Bogey Hills Country Club where they had a professional golf tournament with a $10,000 first prize. I didn't win, Mike. I wasn't there.
It's okay, King. I got to tell you, I'm not here for you. I'm here for the Tilted Kilt Girls. We all know that's the reason we come and watch your show.
Are you telling me that you are selling me down the river for the kilts?
Well, take a look at these ladies. They're beautiful. Why wouldn't I? Can you blame me?
I do not blame you.
That guy is
no, but we had a wonderful showing this week at Bogey Hills. My charity, Birdies for Bipolar.org, partnered with Denny Walters and his charity, the Greater St. Louis Golf Charities, and we had a 3-day event at Bogey Hills, and Jeff Schmidt, who is a head golf professional from Perchy Creek in Columbia, Missouri, took home $10,000. He fired a final round 63.
63
in some very wet conditions.
Now, don't you hold at least a share of the record at Glen Echo with a 63?
At Glen Echo, yes, but not.
You're amazed at my knowledge, aren't you?
Yeah, you really do know your stuff, don't you? But no, Jeff played really well today. He had a 10 under. And was looking at 59 and ended up making a late double bogey, but he ended up winning by 4 shots over Robert Russell, who's a professional from Kansas City. And Mitchell Gregson was third. He's a professional that plays the South American Tour. He's from Waterloo, Illinois. And then my good friend Chris Nagel, he shot 8 under to finish in 4th place. But we had a wonderful event. We raised over $20,000 last night at our auction, our silent auction, our oral auction. And we're doing some good things with my charity and Denny Walters and Chris Nava, who is a buddy of yours and who's the head golf professional, or director of golf, I should say, at Bogey Hills. He did a great job running the tournament. We had a very successful week.
Now, you're telling me that the winner shot a 63 and he had a double bogey?
He had a double bogey on the 16th hole.
16?
He was 10 under, standing on the 16th tee, made double, ended up shooting 63 and then won by 4. So there was some great golf played this week.
Now, the 16th hole, I've played bogey so many times. Is that not a par 3?
It's a par 3 today. It was cold and into the wind. It was playing, I think it was 204 to the back hole location, and it was freezing cold into the wind. I mean, I hit 3-iron today to the back of the green. I'm not sure what Jeff did there, but he made double bogey, but he had already made 10 birdies, so he was fine.
If I have 10 birdies going to 16, I'm going to be okay with a double bogey. Otherwise, I wouldn't be. Hey, I've birdied that hole, so I'm starting to feel pretty good.
Absolutely. It's a tough hole. I mean,
it is a tough.
Today
Where's the pin?
It was back right, and today it was directly into about a 25-mile-an-hour wind.
I would actually rather have that pin in the back on that hole. If it's in the front, you flirt with being way short, and if you go long, you're putting down a ridge.
Yeah, that false front, if you don't get it to that hole, it'll come back off the front of the green, and that's trouble there. Bogey Hills, there's a reason it's named Bogey Hills. I mean, you can get into some spots out there, but obviously Jeff Schmidt didn't have any trouble this week at all.
And he's from Columbia?
Yeah, he's a head pro at Perchy Creek or Perch Creek. I'm not sure if I'm saying that correctly, but, he's about 40, and he just played well. He shot 67, 69, 63, and shot 14 under.
That's playing.
There was a lot of good golf out there.
In this weather, you had to deal with rain over there too, didn't you?
Yeah, we had a rain shortage yesterday. We only got 14 holes in yesterday, and Chris Nava did a great job of getting everybody off the golf course in the right time. Denny Walters was good with sounding his horn in time, and just to get everybody safe before the lightning and the dark skies came in yesterday afternoon.
A lot of fun at Bogey Hills this week, but your charity, of course, is a very important one and very close to your heart.
Yeah, I started a charity about 16 months ago. We called it Birdies for Bipolar. We raise money for people that struggle with mental illness, whether it's bipolar disorder, OCD, anxiety disorder, post-traumatic stress disorder. One of the neatest things that I've gotten to do with this, King, is I've made a bunch of friends with some of the veterans down at the VA hospital. And these guys, they have a golf league every Thursday at Arlington Greens over at Granite City. And so we play golf every Thursday over there, and these guys are incredible. I mean, some of them have no legs, and they play with specialized golf carts. One of my buddies over there, a guy named Mark Hess, he plays on one leg. All these guys suffer from post-traumatic stress disorder, bipolar, OCD, anxiety disorder. And, golf is a tremendous recreational therapy for them. And I've really enjoyed my time with those guys the last 2 years. I've played a lot of Thursdays over there, and we have them to my other golf tournament over 4th of July weekend. This year we had it at the Bluffs, and then some of them came out to Bogey Hills this week and helped us with scoring. They handled all the scoring at like the 9th green and the 18th green so we could keep a scoreboard up. And what we're doing with the money that we raise is we are sending these guys to the Missouri Amputee Golf Tournament, which is at the end of September in Columbia. And it's one of the most rewarding things that I've ever done. And I never thought that me having bipolar disorder would turn into me meeting all these new guys from the VA, guys that I have great respect for, especially on a day like today, like September 11th. These guys who literally have given their limbs for this country. And, let's be honest, some of them aren't taken care of the way that they deserve to be taken care of. And for them to be able to get out on the golf course once a week and then work on their games and then prepare for these tournaments, whether it's the tournament that we have on 4th of July weekend or this tournament they have coming up at the end of September at the Missouri Amputee Tournament, it's really good to see them out and playing golf and just enjoying themselves because they deserve it,
Mike Wellington is visiting with us after the professional golf tournament over at Bogey Hills Country Club, and Mike has a book. It's called Birdies, Bogeys, and Bipolar, and it is a fascinating read, Mike. I've gone through most of the book. I've known you for a long time.
20 years almost. You believe that?
That's sad. I met you when I was 15. You are a great guy, but you are an even better guy for having written this book, because I believe that if people can get a hold of this book, anyone who knows someone who might suffer from this disease, and that's what it is.
Yeah, you're right.
This isn't a choice. This is a disease. I know people who suffer from bipolar who will not admit it.
Right.
And who will not get the help they need. And their life could be very happy if they would. Some of the typical results of this disease are you are alienated from your family. You're alienated from your friends. Am I correct in assessing this?
You have hit the nail right on the head, and I really wouldn't be sitting here with you if I didn't have the help from my family and friends. I mean, my parents have been instrumental in basically not taking my bipolar crap over the years and kind of putting me in my place and helping me to get healthy. I have just a tremendous group of friends that have helped me get healthy, and you're right. I mean, there's people out there that struggle with this disorder, and I've gotten to a point where I've been healthy for 3 years after really, as you read in the book, 10 years of struggling with it, trying to figure out the right medications, learning that I couldn't include alcohol in my diet, just different things that I had to learn over the years, and luckily I've been able to do that, and I put a lot of these ideas into the book. I'm excited about the book. The book will be officially out in 2015, and we got some really neat people involved with it. David Faraday, I told you, is involved. He's going to write the foreword for the book. He also lives with bipolar disorder. I'm sure you've seen his show on the Golf Channel.
I have. Mike Wellington's book is Birdies, Bogeys, and Bipolar. Mike, you just sort of glossed over it momentarily there when you said that you've lived with this for 10 years and you've had struggles. Struggles is not the appropriate word. I mean, it truly isn't. For folks with bipolar, the struggle is vicious. And until you confront it and face up to it, as you have heroically done, in my opinion.
Thank you.
Your life is not going to be good. Your family is going to be alienated. As I said, your friends are going to be. You are not going to live the life you should live. But there is drug therapy.
Sure.
And it helps, doesn't it?
Oh, no question. And it's not just the medication. I mean, don't get me wrong. Medication is key for my health, but it's a combination of taking your medicine, getting enough sleep, keeping alcohol out of your body, getting exercise, and getting therapy. Whether, a lot of people will tell me that, well, I don't have enough money for therapy. I can't afford a therapist. Just because you're not sitting on a leather couch in a doctor's office doesn't mean you can't have therapy. You can have therapy with anyone you trust, whether it's a parent, a friend, a husband, a wife, a sister, a brother. Therapy can happen just, at a table like we're sitting right here. And, everybody in this world has something. I used to look at bipolar as a curse. And now I kind of look at it as a gift because I've been able to get it under control. And now I'm able to share the ideas that I've used to get healthy with some other people that hopefully, will be able to read the book and learn from it. I mean, just to give you an idea, some of these guys that I play in the Veterans League with every Thursday, I gave some copies to those gentlemen who really, I had known them for a couple months. And one of the gentlemen came up to me and he said, "Hey, Mike, thanks a lot for the book. My daughter read the book, and it really gave her some great ideas and insight on how to handle bipolar. She was diagnosed bipolar, and that's the kind of thing, King, that makes me feel really good about what I did, because writing the book, it was an interesting trip down memory lane, because I had to dig deep into my memory. I wrote the book. I started writing the book right around the time when the Cardinals won the World Series, when David Freese was hitting home runs in late 2011. And I never blocked any of that stuff out. I remember all of it, and I went back and I detailed it and I chronicled it, and I just felt like instead of being someone who was going to whine about having the disorder, I wanted to be someone who could educate and teach other people about it, because it is something that can be controlled if you do it the right way.
Mike Wellington is our guest. His book is Birdies, Bogeys, and Bipolar. He's a professional golfer who suffers from bipolar disorder, and you're hearing what he is doing with that. Mike, I get chills because I've known you for so long, and I'll compose myself.
Say whatever you want, King. It's your show.
No, I'm proud of you.
Well, I appreciate that. And I feel, I'd be lying if I said that I wasn't proud of what we're doing here, because, and I didn't want to be someone who was just slinging books. I mean, once I finished writing the book, I sat down with two really close friends of mine, and I said, what are we going to do next? We can't just be a greedy, I don't want to be a greedy guy just slinging books. What are we going to do? And that's when we started the charity, birdiesforbipolar.org. And, King, the people that I have involved on my charity board, I've got Bob Gassoff involved on the charity board. He's a Navy SEAL. I've got Max Scherzer involved on our board, last year's Cy Young Award winner. I've got business tycoons in St. Louis involved in this. I've got PhD people. I've got all the right people surrounding this to make this thing grow. And, we're only 15 or 16 months old, and we don't have any of our own programs yet, but we're funneling our money into good places like the amputee golf tournament. And I found another program down at the St. Patrick's Center that we've been throwing some money into. There's a foundation called the Anthropedia Foundation, and they have partnered with the St. Patrick's Center. And what they do is they take homeless people off the street, they diagnose them with whatever mental illness they may have, they filter them through their program at the St. Patrick's Center, and then they put them out into society and help them find jobs. It's an unbelievable program. And, we're so young, Birdies for Bipolar is so young, that we needed to find somewhere to filter the money that we've been raising, because we've been able to raise a little bit the last couple of years with our golf events, and these are good causes that we've been able to find.
What is it, Mike? What trigger said to you during all of these struggles, and you were at rock bottom?
Oh.
And you were at rock bottom.
Yeah.
For folks who don't know, Birdies, Bogeys, and Bipolar is not just a book. It's an introspective look into one's life by the author, which is you.
Sure.
And you came to a conclusion at some point that you had to change.
Yeah, I was never in denial that I had the disorder. In 2001, I got out of college and I moved to Fort Myers, Florida to start my golf career. And I guess my behavior, whether it was on the phone with friends of mine or on the phone with my parents or with my roommate at the time, was very bizarre. And all my friends that I was calling on the phone, they called my parents and they said, hey, something's wrong with Michael. Go down to Florida, see what's going on. My parents came down. They said, hey, we need to bring you to a doctor. And I love my parents and I trust them, so I didn't put up any fuss. I went right to the doctor, and sure enough, the doctor brings me in the office and he says, Michael, here's a list of all the traits that a bipolar person has. And so I started going down the list, and I'm like, well, I got that, I got that, I got that. I'm like, I have all these things. And so I was never in denial that I needed, or that I was bipolar, but I was in denial that I needed medication, because as a golfer, I was concerned that if I started taking medicine, it would change my touch around the greens. It would change, maybe it would change the way I swung the golf club. It would change just my athleticism maybe a little bit. So that was where I was very scared about taking medication. And from 2001, when I was diagnosed, all the way to 2006, I was not consistent about taking my medication. And as you've read in the book, those years were completely wild, with the culmination in 2006 of me spending 30 days in Barnes Hospital trying to get myself healthy, and luckily I was able to do that.
Mike, you talk about you were able to recognize those traits, and yet the medication comes, and you start taking the medication. And in the book you detail how there's a point where everything's going wonderful for you. And I've heard this story from other from other folks who have bipolar disorder. As you become, in your mind, more normal and everything's going well, your thought process is naturally, I don't need this medication
Isn't
anymore.
that right?
Why should I take it anymore?
I can't explain that. I don't understand that that aspect of it myself. It's weird. It's almost like a pitcher that has a no-hitter going. You know, why would you change anything that you had going during those first 6 or 7 innings for the last couple innings, you know? But it's weird because the bipolar mind, as we were talking about off the air, the bipolar mind is very me, you know? And I think when you get healthy, and I would go for stretches where I would take the medicine and I would continue to be healthy, and then I would get to a point where I'd be like, well, I've been healthy, everything's been fine, I don't need the medicine anymore. Well, that's just blasphemy. I mean, and now I would never do that. But it's a very tricky little thing. I don't really understand why that goes down with bipolar people. People they get going the right direction, taking the medicine the way they need to, and then all of a sudden they stop. I mean,
but what hits you because you took it, then you stopped,
yep,
and now you say you'd never stop. But
right.
what is it that hit you that said, Mike, you can't stop. You've got to continue to take it. It's not good, even though you're having these highs.
Mm-hmm.
But, of course, the lows are going to follow.
Sure. I can tell you the epiphany moment that I had was in 2006. I was in Barnes Hospital during that 30-day stint that I told you about, and I had 2 separate interventions of 4. I had 4 friends of mine come to me on one day, and then 4 different friends come to me on the second day, and they all said the same thing. They said, Michael, we love you, but we cannot be friends with you any longer unless you take your medication. Because at that point, I was really causing havoc within my family, and my parents would always say that to me, but I didn't really accept it from my parents. It was almost like you fall back, when you're in a bipolar haze, you fall back into that 16-year-old mentality of, I don't want to hear anything my parents have to say. So luckily, I had these 8 guys. A couple of them one drove from the Lake of the Ozarks to come up here and talk to me. I had those 8 guys, 4 guys on each day, sit me down at Barnes Hospital and just kind of get in my face a little bit. I mean, they weren't ugly, but they just said, listen, you need the one thing you need to make sure you do is you need to take this medicine, because the common denominator with all these hospital stays I would end up in from 2001 to 2006 was I wasn't taking my medicine. So bottom line is those guys all sat me down, guys who very smart guys I played sports with, guys who are successful in business. I just had great respect for all those guys. And once I heard that coming from my friends, then it kind of flipped the switch on, and I was able to realize I needed to take it every day.
You mentioned, as we talk with Mike Wellington, his book is Birdies, Bogeys, and Bipolar. You mentioned that the bipolar mind thinks me.
Yes.
Is it a selfish thing or is it an attention-grabbing thing?
I think it's a little bit of both. I think that the bipolar mind moves at a very, very fast-paced rate. Bipolar people are very, very intelligent. I mean, if you look at a guy like Faraday, I mean, that guy is amazing on television. You could look at a guy like Ted Turner. He's bipolar. Great actor Ben Stiller is bipolar. Frank Sinatra was bipolar. I mean, bipolar people are very gifted, really, mentally. But you have to be able to keep the speed of the brain, you know, from getting out of control. And, you know, there is that me. There's a selfishness to it. And luckily, you know, I think it's probably because of my dad's upbringing, being a Jesuit guy. He went to St. Louis University High School, then he went to Spring Hill College. You know, he was a man for others, and he kind of taught me, you know, not to be as selfish as maybe I would be if I didn't have my dad. But it's the bipolar mind, when it's manic and when it's depressed, can be very selfish, and you got to try to stay in that middle ground.
And it's highs and lows, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, the mania is the manic highs, and the mania are the things when, you know, I went to there was times in 2005 and 2006 where I didn't sleep for like 3 weeks in a row. I mean, I'd sleep maybe 30 minutes a night, maybe an hour a night, and that was the mania. And my struggles with it were more on the mania side. I mean, I guess because of my lifestyle, you know, I was traveling the country playing golf, and, you know, I was no stranger to staying out late and carousing and drinking too much. And, you know, once I was able to quit drinking in 2011, my life changed a lot for the better.
So the drinking exacerbates the bipolar condition.
Of course, because if you think about it, let's say you go out for a night of drinking, okay? You go out with some buddies, or you go out on a date, you're having a great time, and the enjoyment of the alcohol that evening for those 4 or 5 hours is fun. I mean, I remember it. It was great. It was some of the greatest times of my life. But that can kick you into mania, and then the next day, alcohol is a natural depressant, so the next day, all that alcohol that's still in your body, the mania is over because you're not with your friends from the night before. So the next day you're depressed and you're feeling down. And that's why I finally realized that for me, and any advice I would give any bipolar person, keep alcohol out of your system. I mean, it's just, I look at alcohol now and I think to myself, it's poison. I really do.
Did you turn against your family and your parents and your friends at some point? And by turn against, I mean you just didn't want to hear what they had to say.
Sure. I mean, there was times when, I one time I physically got into it with my dad. My dad is not a big dude. I'm 6'3".
I know your dad.
Yeah, you know my dad. I mean, my dad's about 5'9", $160, soaking wet, and I'm 6'3", 220. And there was some times we got into some shoving matches. And kudos to him because he wasn't going to take any of my crap. And I appreciate that for that. But I had gotten into, situations with friends, arguments and things that probably wouldn't have happened if I was not in a manic state.
Had you been taking your medication?
Right. And, so there's certain things like that happen all the time with the bipolar and the mania. The mania can just, it makes you, it makes you just so much more intense. And you just have to watch it. I mean, even though today I'm still healthy, I'm much healthier than I was 3 years ago. I definitely keep alcohol out of my system, but there's times when I, like just on the golf course today playing. I mean, I got angry.
You're competitive.
Yeah, I'm an athlete. I want to compete. I want to do well, and you got to watch that anger.
The Bible will tell you righteous anger is just fine.
Is that right?
And that's a belief of mine.
Okay.
When anger becomes destructive is when you use it to attack someone, whether verbally or in Ray Rice's case, physically.
Well, luckily I never got to Ray Rice's level, but verbally, I'm not afraid to say I lost my temper verbally, whether with the bipolar over the years, and it's something that I've had to. I don't know if it's maturity. You grow into as you get older, you grow into being a little bit more subdued, a little bit more laid back. But the disorder, when it's out of control, it is a ticking time bomb. Faraday. I was with Faraday last year at St. Albans, and he called it a Dover. What did he call it? A Doberman pincher on steroids. Or a pit bull on steroids, or something like that. I mean, it's really if the bipolar spikes out of control, it can cause havoc in anybody's life.
And Mike, what stops you from going back into that scenario? In other words, okay, something happens in your life, it's not what you want.
Right.
So naturally we feel bad.
Right.
What stops you from saying, screw it, I'm not taking this medication anymore, I don't need it?
That's a great question. I think just because, for me personally, I think because I've had all of these strange situations happen to me, I mean, this thing has brought me to within inches of my life. I mean, I almost lost my life down on 141 in Valley Park at 141 and 44. I almost lost my life on Highway 40. And I think because those things happened to me, now I'm able to keep an eye on it. But, one of the reasons I wrote this book and one of the reasons I started the charity is because when I was 23 years old, when I got diagnosed, I really could have used someone my age. I'm 36 years old now. I really could have used someone to give me some advice and learn from, because when I was diagnosed, I didn't know what it was. I had no idea.
Your younger brother, 7 years younger than you,
Yep.
said to you, when are you going to grow up?
Yeah.
You put that in the book.
Yeah, that's true. I had gotten into some trouble from drinking, and I was in a manic state, and my brother had to pick me up at the police station at Richmond Heights. And, he's 7 years younger than me. We're walking to the car after he gets me out of the slammer. And he did say that to me, and that really kind of was eye-opening, because he's my kid brother, he's my baby brother, and I look at him like that. And
but still, you have a disease, so how are
Right.
you able to process that with the disease thing? I'm thinking aloud here.
Sure.
People with that disease would say, well, screw him, what does he know?
Well, I think that's a good point, but I think because he's my brother, he's one of my best friends, if not my best friend with my dad. He's a guy that's caddied for me. He's been there for me in the heat of battle and competition. So from just that standpoint, from him being my caddy, not even my brother, I always listen to my caddy,
Had your brother and your father not confronted you and told you, what the hell are you doing, do you think you'd be sitting here today with
Absolutely not. There's no way. And my mom really is the tough one. I mean, she's the strong one. She's from the south side of Chicago. She doesn't take any crap. And I at the time when all these things are going on, I'm thinking to myself, man, my parents are tough, man. But now I really, really appreciate them so much more, because I'll tell you a funny story. I was down in Tulsa, Oklahoma, visiting a college friend of mine maybe a year ago, and I had given him a copy of the book. And I said, his name was Billy. I said, Billy, did you read the book? And he said, yeah. He said, your parents just weren't going to take your crap, were they? And I said, no, and thank God they didn't. And, kudos to them. And, I mean, I'm not going to lie. The only reason that I'm healthy today is because of my family and my friends, and that's it. I'm very, very extremely lucky to have all these friends I have, not just in St. Louis, but all over the country. I mean, I've been lucky to travel the country playing golf for many years, and I have friends in a lot of different cities. And, there's some friends of mine that now they know that I had the disorder, but when I told them about the book, they were like, well, Michael, we've never seen you in a weird state. We didn't even know you had the disorder.
Well, no, you can a bipolar will. You wrote in your introduction in the book, in fact. If you meet me in public, you won't know it.
Right.
If you sit and talk to me, you won't know it.
Right.
If you're my friend, chances are you won't know it unless you're with me on these manic episodes.
Right.
It's an amazing disease in that sense.
Right. It's almost like I was subliminally able to hide it, but I wasn't trying to hide it.
Right.
I just was being myself. And if someone,
good time Charlie.
If someone, exactly. If someone were to play golf with me now, and then at the end of the round, they would say, I could tell them I'm bipolar. And I've had that happen a couple times in the last year or two. They would be like, "You are?" I don't believe that.
They say, "Well, I knew that. I knew it when you had that ball in the trees." And
Sure. Now, if I hit it out of bounds and I start stomping down the right side of the fairway,
I must be bipolar because I've been doing it a lot.
Sure. But I mean,
What the hell's going on out here?
But I mean, my hero playing golf growing up was Freddie Couples. So I always try to act like him on the golf course. I tried to be real even keel and not get too excited. And still, that fire still burns in me. But I don't want to be the guy that's slamming clubs and chucking clubs and all that kind of stuff. But the disorder definitely probably had an effect on my play. Probably still has an effect on my play to a certain extent. But it can also be helpful. Sometimes you might need a little kick in the butt to get going after making a bogey and to go make a birdie. So it could be helpful.
But more so than your professional golf life, what about your personal life?
What do you mean by that?
How did this disease affect your personal life? And not just with your family, which we already
Sure.
heard that it affected it greatly, but your family was tough and stood up to you and said, what the F are you doing?
Right.
What about your personal relationships?
Yeah, I mean, the disorder
You
certainly.
wrote a lot about a woman named Hope in your book.
Yeah, Hope, what a great girl. Certainly the disorder has cost me relationships. It's cost me a couple of friendships that, I still kick myself a little bit about because sometimes the disorder gets out of control and, I might have said things that I shouldn't have said, and it gets your anger to a level where you really will attack someone verbally when you're in a manic state or even a depressed state. And those, some of those relationships that I had lost, some of them have been mended, but some of them have been lost forever, and that's difficult. But, there's nothing I can do about that now. But you have to – what I've tried to do from those is learn from those.
Have you tried, Mike? In other words, when a relationship went awry because of something you might have said that you wish you wouldn't have said, can it be mended with a conversation? Hey, I'm really sorry. Here's what I was dealing with.
I think to a certain extent you could blame some things on the disorder, but I'm kind of a no excuses type person. So, there may have been times when I did things that were caused by the disorder, but in my healthy states, I don't want to blame anything on the disorder. But at the same time, there's things that I would do differently.
Sure.
I think anybody might
Well,
say
we'd all
that.
do things differently.
Right. But there's been times when I look back and I think, and there's things in the book that you've read that are completely embarrassing, but I felt like I needed to tell those things in order to be transparent about exactly what the disorder can do to the human mind when it's not healthy,
Mike Wellington is our guest. His book is Birdies, Bogeys, and Bipolar. You mentioned me in your book.
Of course I mentioned the king. Well, I always had a...
Was I part of the problem?
No, it's funny because I don't think you ever saw me in a bad state.
I did not.
In the times I've known you.
Never did.
I've
played golf with you.
Sure.
You have interns for me.
Right. We've been out to dinner many
Yeah.
times. Yeah.
I've never... the most shocking revelation to me was when you called me and told me, or texted me and told me about the book and about the disorder. Sure. I would have never guessed it.
Yeah, a lot of people have said that to me. Some people just don't know. Friends of mine, you're a perfect example. I've never seen you when I've been in a state of mania or a state of serious depression, and people just don't know that it's there. But obviously the book shows that it was. But I always had a wonderful affinity for broadcasting. I mean, obviously I interned for you when I was in college. I was able to one of the best broadcasting jobs I ever had. I got into broadcasting a little bit, but my favorite broadcasting job was for the Missouri Tiger baseball team.
As you articulate in the book quite a bit.
Oh, and that was, King, that was one of the greatest jobs I ever did. And I got to be honest with you, I didn't make any money. I made $25 a game. I was losing money.
Those are usually the best jobs.
I was losing money driving to Columbia, back and forth from St. Louis to Columbia because I wasn't getting paid enough. But that gave me a great opportunity to be on a team again with my old friend Tony Vitello from DeSmet. His dad's a legendary coach from DeSmet, Greg Vitello, and Tony was an assistant coach, head recruiter, and Max Scherzer was on that team, and we had a great team. We made it to what would be the equivalent of the Sweet 16 in the College World Series. And I'll tell you what, out of all the things that I regret or that I'm disappointed that I lost from bipolar disorder, the number one thing was I got really sick at the end of that baseball season. I called 60 games, and then I wasn't able to go with the team to Malibu for our Super Regional for the College World Series. And out of all the things that happened to me, that would be the one thing that I wish I could do over, because that would have been so much fun being with all those guys. Some of these guys, Scherzer's obviously a star. He's won the Cy Young, but there's a bunch of other guys in that team that have been in the majors or got a taste of the majors, and there was just a great chemistry with that team.
You're a great athlete. You're a great golfer, a professional golfer. You talk about being around the team, the baseball team.
Sure.
I often wonder, and I often thought about this in my own life, where I was a pretty good athlete, but never could get to that elite level. And I thought, when I watch guys who did, you're one of them, and I see them not get even further,
sure,
or retire, even a successful career, and retire. I think, what happens? And was this part of it for you?
Right.
What happens when you no longer have that competitive situation to wake up to every day? How difficult is that?
That's a very good question. I'm not there yet. I still like.
You're much younger.
I'm 36. Yeah, I got to compete this week, and my golf game's it's not real sharp right now. I mean, I played today. This week was my 7th, 8th, and 9th competitive rounds of the year. But this year and last year, I've been working on the charity. I've been working on my book, but I love to compete. I love that adrenaline that you get.
There's nothing like
on
it.
The first hole. I love the adrenaline that you get coming down the stretch. You can't recreate it. There's no drug.
There's no business.
There's no drink. There's nothing that you can do to recreate that or make that happen. And my plan is I want to get this charity going in the right direction, get this book out there. And I'm not married. I don't have any children. I'm 36 years old. I still got some competitive golf left in me. Now, there's other things that are more important right now, and I think that was one of my problems for many years that hindered me with the disorder. I put golf so high up on the pedestal that I didn't take care of my health. And now I finally got my health in order. I don't have as much time to play golf right now, but I got a feeling there's going to come a day, whether it's a year from now or 6 months from now or 2 years from now, when I'll be playing a lot more competitive golf. But you know what, King? I have felt so rewarded by working with those veterans and getting the word out about people with bipolar. I had a friend of mine who I play golf with at Persimmon Woods who called me the other day, and he said, "Michael, my 18-year-old daughter just got diagnosed bipolar. Would you talk to her?" And I said, "Absolutely. Let's go have dinner." We went and had dinner, and I gave her a copy of the book, and because I know that I would have benefited so much at 23 years old when if I would have been able to talk to someone. Because again, when you're a young kid in your late teens or your early 20s, you get diagnosed with something like this, the last thing you want to hear is what your parents have to say about it. Right. And I don't know why that is, but that's just the way that it is.
Because it is.
Yeah, and it's weird, but that's the way that it is.
Because your parents don't know anything.
Yeah. When in reality, my parents knew all along.
That's right. But you were blessed because
Very much
they wouldn't put up with it, and they confronted you. And I don't mean by confrontation something that's untoward or some physical. I mean confrontation, meaning, come on, we got to address this. We've got to talk.
Right.
The worst thing probably that could have happened to you is that no one would sit down and talk with you. If they would ignore it and just say, okay, fine, you're who you are, you would still be that way, wouldn't you?
I think so. I mean, I think unless my parents, if my parents didn't confront me, or, I remember when I was going through some hospital situations in the early 2000s, my sister was living in North Carolina at the time, and I was mad at my parents, so I didn't really want to talk to them. But my sister was a great outlet because I could call her on the phone, and she could be the person I could talk to because I didn't want to listen to my parents at that time. And then,
were you
eventually,
BSing her?
No, I think at that when you're in that situation, when you're in a mental hospital. I mean, because that's where I was. I mean, I've had 5 or 6 mental hospital stays in my life. I mean, one was in Florida, the rest of it all been in St. Louis. There's always the people that you don't want to talk to, but there's always at least one person that you can confide in. And you mentioned Hope, the girl that I dated for a long time. She was a person that I could confide in. My sister was a person I could confide in. And then eventually, I got to a point where, I could talk to my parents about everything without a problem. But I don't know, and I think that's why I'm a big proponent of therapy. And like I said, you don't have to sit on somebody's couch, a doctor's couch. You can have therapy with, your cousin or your brother or your sister, whoever. Therapy, just talking things out with whatever issue you have,
right,
is important.
I firmly agree with that. I'm a big proponent of talking and not ignoring.
Absolutely. The more you ignore, the more you turn your back on it, at least for me with bipolar disorder, the more it engulfed me.
Birdies, Bogeys, and Bipolar, Mike Wellington's book. Mike has been our guest. He is a friend of mine. He interned with me. I have never been so impressed by anyone in my life.
Well, I thank you.
After reading your book.
I appreciate that very, very much.
After talking with you here today. You are an impressive human being, my friend, who confronted it, who is willing to talk about it, to admit it. There aren't many people with the courage that you have shown. There just aren't.
Well, I appreciate you saying that, and I promise you, when the book comes out, you've got the first edit copy. It's one of the secret copies. When the real book comes out in 2015, I'll come back on and we'll talk more, and we can cover any of these topics because I just think it's important. We were talking off the air about mental illness, and it's becoming so much more in the mainstream, and everybody has something. We all
have stuff to deal with.
Yeah, and
let's not hide from it.
There's wonderful drugs out there and wonderful doctors that you can utilize. But like you said, when people turn their back on those things, those tools, life can be tough.
And if you were talking to someone right now who you suspected of bipolar disorder, what would you? And they would not get help. They would not get help from their family, from doctors. No, it's not me. What would you say to them?
The first thing I would say to anybody like that is, do not put alcohol into your body. Do not do it. It is like pouring gasoline on a fire. And let me tell you something. I know because I tried it. I tried it for years. I went to school in Alabama where we drink whiskey. And I tried drinking, St. Louis is a drinking town, as you know. So I've been around drinking my whole life. And, my life changed for the better, especially probably overall, but definitely took the edge off my bipolar when I stopped drinking in October of 2011. No doubt about it.
So don't drink and then get help.
And take your medicine.
And if you've been diagnosed, take your medicine. Don't ever stop.
Absolutely.
Mike Wellington, Birdies, Bogeys, and Bipolar. My friend, you are impressive.
Thank you, sir. Always a pleasure to share I appreciate you saying. Always a pleasure to share the airwaves.
If I had known when you were interning with me, I would have promoted you ahead of me. Hey, Mike, thanks.
Thanks, Kevin. I appreciate it.